Walking west along Oxford Street to Marble Arch, who recalls that he is treading the route of the black map of London's landscape of pain and shame? The black map was created by the frenzy of religious persecution in Tudor times, when Christian martyrs were killed as heretics at Smithfield and for treason at Tyburn. The black map comprises the areas of Smithfield, the Tower of London, Newgate Prison, the Old Bailey, to the one-way destination at the dread Tyburn Tree, now named Marble Arch. Beneath the surface of this busy modern intersection, the black map still records the atrocities inflicted on those executed here. Their fate? To be hanged, drawn and quartered amid cruelest barbarities and grossest indecencies.
A village just on the outskirts of the old London city boundaries became synonymous with capital punishment. For the best part of 1,000 years, the area hosted brutal public executions upon the gallows known as the Tree at Tyburn, or the Tyburn Tree. In 1571, Tyburn received another revamp with the construction of the infamous Tree. The Tree was a triple-sided gallows capable of hanging multiple people as once. The tree consisted of a horizontal wooden triangle supported by 3 legs, giving it the name the Three-Legged Mare. As London started to build out to the west, the Tyburn Triple Tree became a landmark, being at the increasingly busy junction of Edgware Road and Oxford Street and Bayswater Road. It became the first sight of London for many newcomers to the city. The first victim of the tree was treason convict Dr. John Story, a Roman Catholic. The tree became the main execution site for Londoners, drawing massive crowds on execution day. Tyburn after 1783 would still attract crowds, however not for the gruesome acts of watching a person hang from the neck, but instead listen to a person exchange beliefs and views. You see, many of the political prisoners used their last moments on earth to try and convince the public that they had given their life for a noble cause. The last human dignity given to a condemned person is their right to say what they want as their last words. And this became the seed of freedom of speech as we know it. Even though death had left Tyburn, the place had become synonymous with the freedom to express your view, and as such Speaker's Corner became the legacy of Tyburn that we still see today. A place where Marx and Lenin both explain their views to the world. Although Tyburn has left a cultural legacy in London, there is only a stone marker of the site of the tree left, and a shrine to the martyrs at Tyburn.
While William the Conqueror fought his way to the throne of England, Catherine de' Medici was rumoured to have poisoned her way to the throne of 16th century France. her ruthless family were powerful and wealthy Italian bankers who were so intent on becoming royalty, they had the heads of the family portrayed as three wise men in the family chapel. The Medici's headquarters was Florence, where they had ruled for generations, but they also had connections in Rome. In 1533, Pope Clement VII, also a Medici, arranged for his niece, 14-year-old Catherine, to marry Henry, the younger son of the King of France. Shortly after Catherine de' Medici's arrival in France, Henry's older brother, the heir to the French throne, died suddenly while playing tennis. The official cause of death was a chill, but rumors circulated he had been murdered by Catherine. The Italians were notorious poisoners, and the death cleared the way for her to become Queen of France. Henry became king, but Queen Catherine bore him no children for 10 years. She then suddenly produced 6 babies in as many years. Many believed she had used witchcraft to gain fertility. Catherine was fascinated by the occult and built a special tower here at Chaumont Castle, where she consulted the famous astrologer Nostradamus. Nostradamus's final prediction was that the French throne would pass from Medici control out of the family.
The sudden death will put another in the kingdom.
With all Catherine's sons dead, the prophecy came true, and the throne passed to the next in line, Henry of Navarre. When Catherine herself died in the same year, all seemed lost for the Medicis, but the ruthless family was not finished. The new King Henry's fiancée, Gabrielle, died mysteriously of violent stomach pains. It was rumored that she too had been poisoned. A few weeks later, Henry received an offer from the Medicis to take the wealthy Marie de' Medici as his new queen. Catherine was dead, but the Italian family revived their reputation as scheming poisoners, out to establish a royal dynasty. Marie quickly gave birth to a baby boy, who would become Louis XIII of France. For another 200 years, the Medici's descendants ruled France. The Medici's powerful dynasty was eclipsed by a family from the Alpine state of Austria that founded the longest royal line in European history. But in the seed of the dynasty's beginning was the germ of its eventual destruction. The obscure noble family rose to royal status to become the powerful kings of the Austrian Empire. They were the Habsburgs. A double-headed eagle was their emblem, and their motto became,
"Let others wage war, but you happy Habsburgs, marry."
While other royal families made war to gain power, the Habsburgs made love to expand their power. The dynasty was founded in 1271 in the small state of Austria. The first Habsburg kings were rulers with more ambition than power and wealth. 200 years later, the young Maximilian I was to change the entire dynasty's future. This magnificent mausoleum in Innsbruck, Austria, is laid out as a funeral procession for Maximilian. Here he is, surrounded by statues of his family, relatives, and ancestors. During his rule from 1493 to 1519, Maximilian was to make the Habsburgs the most powerful royal family in Europe. But he never knew that at the same time he was sowing the seeds for their ultimate destruction. The Habsburgs negotiated with Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy, because he had 3 things the Austrian royal family wanted. He was the richest man in Europe, an enemy of the French, and he had an eligible daughter, Maria. Negotiators arranged a marriage between Maximilian of Austria and Maria of Burgundy. Royal marriages of the time were political alliances rather than love matches. Emperor Maximilian started negotiations with the Spanish, who also had three things Austria sought: wealth, an ally against France, and 2 eligible royal children. The heirs to the Spanish throne were John and Joanna, the same age as Maximilian's children. Natural candidates for his power marriage strategy, Maximilian sought a double marriage to both Spanish heirs. The strategy worked, and the Spanish Joanna gave Maximilian 6 grandchildren. His grandson Charles I was to become the most powerful man in Europe, ruling over a global empire which stretched from Austria to the Netherlands, from Sicily to Mexico, and on to South America. Maximilian continued his marriage strategy and busily married his 6 grandchildren into all the major royal houses of Europe. His court became a veritable royal breeding service, and with each marriage his empire grew in power, size, and wealth. All Maximilian's granddaughters became queens. Maria was Queen of Hungary. Eleanor got France. Elizabeth got Denmark. And Catherine got Portugal. He even arranged for a daughter-in-law to marry the King of England, completing his royal flush. The Habsburg dynasty accomplished the astonishing expansion of their empire not by conquest, but by marriage. But the supply of eligible royals was running out. To hold on to their power at all costs, the Habsburgs instituted a new policy: marry within the family. The result was biological disaster. Unknown to anyone, a genetic time bomb was already planted in the Habsburg dynasty. The Spanish Joanna, whose 6 children started the marriage frenzy, eventually went insane, and her madness was hereditary. The seeds of mental illness had been transmitted to all 6 of her children, the inheritors of the Habsburg dynasty. At the same time, a physical genetic defect was emerging in the ever-expanding family, the Habsburg chin. Maximilian and many of his relatives had very pronounced lower jaws and lips. Charles I, his all-powerful grandson, had a chin which protruded so far his lower teeth could not meet his uppers. Madness and the Habsburg chin were now carried by marriage to every branch of the Habsburg dynasty and into the royal families of Europe. The genetic nightmare had begun. As Habsburg married Habsburg, inbreeding produced generation after generation of freakish mutants, many suffering from insanity. Spanish King Philip II, a depressive suffering from gout, asthma, and epilepsy, decorated his bedroom with Hieronymus Bosch's nightmare paintings of hellfire and damnation. Austrian Rudolf II went insane and was forced from the crown by his brother Matthias. In Spain, the family line degenerated into the freak King Carlos. 7 of his 8 great-grandparents were Habsburgs, and his mother was also his first cousin. As a child, Carlos couldn't even stand unaided, and his jaw was so deformed he couldn't chew his food. Plagued by fainting spells and constant fevers, he was also impotent. Priests were called to exorcise this curse on the Spanish throne. But Carlos died in 1700 at the age of 39. His autopsy revealed internal organs so deformed and degenerated, witchcraft was suspected. He is remembered as Carlos the Bewitched. On his death, the crown of Spain was snatched by the old Habsburg rival, France. The genetic curse of the Habsburgs ruined Maximilian's plans and brought the Spanish line to a crashing end. But the remaining Habsburgs continued to intermarry, unaware it was the root of all their troubles. Though the Habsburg dynasty stayed in power in Austria for another 200 years, the happy Habsburgs, who had spread their dynasty all across Europe without firing a single shot, were felled by their own genes.
Here's Otto von Habsburg, friend of the Pope, member of the, or former head of the House of Habsburg. He is the international honorary president of the International Pan-European Union today, after Kalergi died back in the 70s, I think. Former member of the European Parliament, Christian Social Union of Bavaria, he was representing. Here's Otto von Habsburg shaking hands with Karl, one of his sons, one of his 7 kids, Karl von Habsburg or Lorraine. Initiating him into the Order of St. Sebastian in or of Europe. Some interesting European emblems for you down there to study. An interesting kind of rainbow priest in the background for that too. Karl Habsburg with his father checking out the European Parliament. He is the current head of the Austrian branch of the Order of the Golden Fleece, founder and president of the organization Pan-Europe, Austria. Elected to the European Parliament via ÖVP, Australian People's Party, head of the House of Habsburg right now. Swedish lady, one of his daughters, Walburga, Archduchess Walburga of Austria. German-Swedish lawyer, politician, joined the Moderate Party in 2006. She worked as an assistant in the European Parliament. She's suspected to have very leading roles in the EU in the future because of her royal connections. She's already successfully pushing proposals in Sweden to always hang the European flag next to the Swedish flag in schools and in parliament buildings and things like that too. Archduke George of Austria, another one of his sons, Otto von Habsburg's sons. He's the president of the Red Cross in Hungary, a knight of the Order of the Golden Fleece, strong supporter of the enlargement of Europe. On May 1st, note that date for all you symbolists out there, 2004, he was chair at the Grand Europe Ball, a black-tie charitable gala held at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York to celebrate the historic occasion when 8 Central and Eastern European countries joined the EU. So what I'm getting at here is that these boys are working not behind the scenes, really. They're on the scene in that sense now. Francis II, the last Holy Roman Empire of the House of Habsburg, Lorraine, and in that sense they're coming back, right? They're bringing these people back into place.
In this tradition we found also other important people that were linked to Naples in particular. And it's in Naples that the actually Arcana Arcanorum of the Mizraim rite of Freemasonry originates. And this Arcana Arcanorum has at some level a connection with the Jesuit tradition, also because the Prince of San Severo, Raimondo di San Sangro, was a Jesuit disciple and a student of their secrets. So, as you can see, this connection is not so far-fetched. We found out in La Mentorella this really close connection between the Jesuits and Isis and the mother goddess, described so well by Athanasius Kircher, following on the footsteps, obviously, of somebody we also know very well, which is described, which describes the golden ass, which is Apuleius. So the Isis, the figure of Isis, is then transposed into the Black Mary, into the Mary figure, which we also saw in the main church here of the Jesuits in Piazza del Gesù. and this devotion towards the Mother Goddess seems to be of great importance. The Black Mary is more clearly, obviously, Isis, but all the Holy Marys are in reality the Mother Goddess, are a representation of Isis. Atlantis, well, as we know, Athanasius Kircher created this map of Atlantis based on his work with Plato and the Timaeus and the Cryptia. But we can also say that he did this after being in the sanctuary of Mentorella for 5 years. Did he find out something during that time that gave him the possibility to write down in so much detail this map? We don't know that for sure, but we know that there is a lot of talk about an Arcana Arcanorum of Atlantis, which is deposited in the Jesuit tradition. And we definitely know that Athanasius Kircher knew a lot more than the average man of his age. That's why he was probably one of the most important men of science of his age. And for sure, the person that represents more the tradition of magic, of alchemy, the esoteric tradition of the Jesuits.
You know, they used to say, we rule the world from this building, which is in the corner in front of the Vatican, on the left, small. We rule the world from here. So the Jesuits were behind the establishment of the degrees of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. They were behind the foundation of the Illuminati with Adam Weishaupt, who was a professor of canonic law at the University of Ingolstadt. And they basically are still to this day the link to the Academy of the Illuminati.